Mark Rogers TV, week 6 of our college football predictions. We finally missed a game last week. We had actually picked 36 games in a row correctly. Obviously, most of those games were gimmies. Still, we picked the tough ones as well. 36 straight before going 13-3 last week. That was straight up. 10-6 against the spread. We'll take it. We're shooting for 60% against the spread. 10-6 last week. 3-2 in our confidence picks against the spread. We would like to hit 60% there as well. We've done much better than that in recent years. 21-9 against the spread confidence picks. 25-12 last season. Again, 10-6, breaking a little funk that we had in missing 3 consecutive games. Okay, let's go right to the picks and let's run them down. Louisville at Temple. Owls at home. Plus 33.5 there. You know what we think about the big point spreads with not knowing who's going to be on the field in the fourth quarter and how hard they're going to be playing or what the play calling is going to be like. Go for the jugular or ease off the throttle. Still, we'll take Temple plus the 33.5. Louisville can pretty much name the score. They're going to name it less than 33.5 in this one. Okay, Bama, Georgia State, 55.5. If Alabama could possibly have some type of incentive of putting up triple digits in this game, it could. They will not. They will not cover 55.5 points. Give me the 55.5 in Georgia State. All right, some competitive football here. Florida State taking on Maryland. The Terps much improved, but not enough to cover at Florida State. Not to compete with the Noles here, although Florida State gave up late garbage touchdowns against BC last week and only beat Boston College by 14. We like the Noles minus 15.5 against Maryland. Miami, Georgia Tech. We think that the Canes are a substantially better football team, not in blowout fashion, but they're in better than Georgia Tech in the major categories here. Georgia Tech gets behind, can't throw it. That's a huge liability. The rushing game is dominant for Georgia Tech. Still, we like Miami at home covering 5.5 in a key game in the ACC. Canes defeat the Yellow Jackets minus 5.5. Clemson, Syracuse. Inaugural game in the ACC for Syracuse. They get it at home against what is probably the best team in the ACC, number 3 ranked Clemson. This will be a competitive football game. The Q's talking it up. Syracuse players have been talking upset all week. They will not get the upset. They will not cover. Tigers win at minus 13.5. Okay, this is our first confidence pick of the week, and despite the quarterback situation at Nebraska, we're going to keep it as a confidence pick. This might be really stupid of me, but I believe in Nebraska. I don't believe in Nebraska. If you watch my video post, I don't believe in the defense. But hosting Illinois, difficult place for the Illini to go in and be competitive. Tommy Armstrong at quarterback for Nebraska. The plus here is that he got to play most of the game against South Dakota State last week. And Illinois, after really showing up against Cincinnati early in the season, starting to falter a little bit. Okay, we like Nebraska minus 8 at home against Illinois in a confidence pick. Call it a hunch here. The Nebraska defense has faltered, but we believe they're a much better football team than Illinois and will race to victory here. Again, Nebraska in a confidence pick, minus 8 against Illinois. All right, Oregon, Colorado, regardless of the points here. And Colorado's played a little bit better under Mike McIntyre this season coming from San Jose State. The Buffs get 38.5 points here at home against Oregon. We like the Ducks to cover 38.5 points. All right, Georgia, Tennessee, confidence pick here. Tennessee's a really marginal football team, a bad football team when it comes to SEC standards. We saw what Georgia did last week offensively against LSU, a top 10 defense. We saw what Georgia did against Clemson, against South Carolina. We know that there could be a letdown. We know that the game's at Rocky Top. We know that Tennessee's coming out with those smoky gray jerseys. We know that Tennessee's a pretty bad football team, again, by these standards. They could have lost to South Alabama last week. They got some lucky breaks late. Fortunate breaks, we'll call them, one at 31-24. Georgia's a superior football team. This spread is 10.5. We know that Todd Gurley may not play in this game. Only more incentive for Keith Marshall to say, hey, give me the rock, and I'll prove that I'm one of the best backs in the country, regardless of my backup status here. Take Georgia in a confidence pick, 10.5 against Tennessee. All right, Florida, Arkansas, a game that we previewed here on Mark Rogers TV along with the Buzz 103.7's Trey Shapp. He's headed down to the game in Gainesville, covers Arkansas football for 103.7 The Buzz. And so check out that post. A lot of great insight into Arkansas football. Taking on Florida, we like Arkansas with a fine field goal kicker, 2 excellent defensive ends, and a team that hung with Texas A&M at home last week to go to the Swamp and play this one close. Florida's got the superior defensive talent, superior speed on the outside. Florida will struggle with Murphy at quarterback at times, and so this will be a close game. Call it like 20-13. So Hogs escape plus the 11.5 points. Florida wins the game at home. Okay, LSU-Mississippi State. LSU losing at Georgia last week still does not get in the way of LSU moving on to the SEC championship game. If they hold serve and Alabama holds serve, it still comes down to LSU taking on Alabama. They can beat Alabama, win the tiebreaker head-to-head with 1 loss in the conference, still go to the SEC championship game. We love the incentive there for the Tigers to get rolling after, again, that last-minute loss at Georgia where the offense played extremely well. They will continue to play well against a pretty mediocre Mississippi State team. LSU covers 9.5 points here against Mississippi State in Starkville. Again, confidence pick. LSU minus 9.5 against Mississippi State. Oklahoma-TCU, the Sooners have proved to be a pretty good football team. The defense is much improved. Blake Bell playing better in recent weeks after winning the job. And we like Oklahoma at home against TCU. Sooners minus 10 against TCU. Okay, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Cowboys looked horrible, especially in the first half, in falling behind against a West Virginia team that have themselves looked horrible most of this season, winning over William and Mary by 7, losing in shutout fashion to Maryland 37-0. Then Oklahoma State goes out there, and I knew it, taking a road team in the Big 12. Oklahoma State minus 18.5, didn't even win the football game. So we like Oklahoma State to bounce back at home, taking on Kansas State. So Oklahoma State minus 14 against Kansas State. We were thinking about a confidence pick here, but no confidence pick. Michigan at home against Minnesota. We like the Gophers to keep it somewhat close. Michigan will win comfortably, but 19.5 points is too much. Almost made this a confidence pick, but considering Minnesota lost at home to Iowa by 16, yes, Michigan could put on the throttle in the second half and win it by 20 or 25. So that said, Michigan wins, Minnesota plus the 19.5 here. Stanford-Washington. The Cardinal, not typically a team that's going to lay down the throttle and take out a team that they're superior against, like an Oregon will, like a Clemson will. But still, we think Stanford is a very solid football team, and they're at home. They're one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the country. Washington's coming on. We're very impressed with what they did on the road against Illinois and specifically against Boise State. They're an undefeated football team, but they lose their first game, and Stanford covers the 7 at home against Washington. Okay, Auburn, Ole Miss, a very close football game on the Plains. We're going to pick the upset here. The Rebels got knocked down by Alabama last week after talking it up big all week. Yes, they should have incentive to bounce back. They've gotten knocked down. They should come back strong. But we like Auburn and what they showed us against LSU in Death Valley. For Auburn to go down to Death Valley and take LSU to the final couple minutes of that game, Auburn showed us something there. Take Auburn plus the 3.5 and to win the game outright at home against Ole Miss. Okay, South Carolina, Kentucky. Take Kentucky plus the 21.5. Connor Shaw on the sideline. Dylan Thompson, despite what he showed us last year against Clemson and in the bowl game and throwing a touchdown, game-winning touchdown against Michigan, Dylan Thompson has not been playing well. And Kentucky will keep it relatively close at home against South Carolina. Take the Wildcats plus the 21.5. Still, South Carolina wins it fairly handily. We came close to pulling the trigger on another confidence pick, but we've got to make the confidence picks special. We only picked 37 games last year, the entire season. We're already up to 16 at this point. And again, if we're going to keep the winning percentage up, we've got to be very selective. Although I loved Notre Dame getting 6 points against Arizona State. I know that Arizona State's got a fast defense, quality defense, one of the better defensive players in the country. And Will Sutton at defensive end. but they got hammered at Stanford. They should have lost the game against Wisconsin. This is a neutral site game. Sure, Notre Dame has lost a ton on defense, but still, Stephon Tuitt, Louis Nix III, Prince Shembo, a lot of great players on defense for Notre Dame are still there in South Bend. And if Tommy Rees doesn't turn over the football, I like Notre Dame to pull off the upset. Call it a bit of a hunch. We don't think Arizona State's a 6-point better team than Notre Dame at a neutral site. So take Notre Dame plus the 6 points against the Sun Devils. Couple games later on at night, of course. We've got the Buckeyes. We're getting to them. But first, Baylor defeats West Virginia. And despite the Mountaineers showing at home last week and defeating Oklahoma State, pulling off a big upset, the biggest of the weekend, we like Baylor to win this game in a big way. But West Virginia will take the 28.5 points. That's a lot of points. And again, Baylor scores a ton. They could certainly cover it. This is a toss-up. Take West Virginia plus the 28.5 points. Baylor wins the football game handily. And finally, the game of the week, Ohio State-Northwestern. The Buckeyes were impressive at times against Wisconsin, certainly on offense, showed themselves to be vulnerable against the pass. They loaded up against the run against the Badgers. We've talked about this game throughout the week. Certainly check out our video posts as we have previewed this weekend's action. Northwestern's a quality football team. People that don't follow college football are kind of wondering about Northwestern. Well, Northwestern's been a quality football team for several years. And what they do now, in addition to what they've been doing for the last 10 years and being competitive, is that they're adding athletes and speed. The recruiting is much better at Northwestern right now than it's been even in the last 4 to 5 years. In the last 2 seasons, Northwestern has ratcheted up the recruiting as Pat Fitzgerald has gone national in the recruiting efforts. Still, Ohio State is the class of the Big Ten. They will win at Northwestern, but this is a big challenge for the Buckeyes, and Northwestern will keep this game close. Take Northwestern minus the 7. So take Northwestern plus the 7, actually. Ohio State wins the football game, and the Wildcats cover it. So again, confidence picks. Let's run them down real quick. We had 3 of them. We've got Georgia minus 10.5 against Tennessee. We like Nebraska minus 8 against Illinois. And we've also got, what was the other confidence pick? LSU minus 9.5 against Mississippi State. We certainly considered Minnesota plus 19.5 against Michigan, so keep that on the radar. And also Notre Dame getting 6 against Arizona State. But those are the 3 confidence picks: Georgia, Nebraska, and LSU. All right, there we go. We would love to hear from you. I throw my picks out there. That's what they are. I just throw them out there. I spend all of about 12 seconds per game analyzing and researching these games. So you do the same. Throw in your picks. We would love to hear from you right here on Mark Rogers TV.